You're listening to Lords of Thunder podcast with Alpha Omega Sin and Happy Console Gamer.
So, welcome back to another podcast. And this is kind of unusual. This is this is a brand new podcast. And it's called the Lords of Thunder podcast. And we just had the opening there. And I'm joined with Alpha Omega Sin. I'm Johnny Millennium. For people who don't know me, I have a show called the Happy Console Gamer Show, and I have that with my co-host Rob. And I'm joined with Alpha Omega Sin. And man, this has been a long time coming, and I'm quite excited about it.
Dude, the podcasting world has missed you infinitely, so I think it was about due time for you to go and make your triumphant return.
It's been a couple of years, and I did a podcast in the past, the All Gen Gamers, and had a lot of fun on there. And then I got really busy, and I kind of got married, and kind of did a whole bunch of other things in my life, movies and stuff like that. And I've just kind of settled down, and we met. We should talk about how we met and why we decided to do this. First of all, do you want to take us there? Or?
Well, we did go out on a candlelight dinner, and everything was really nice. Naturally, you paid and stuff. I put on my best dress. No, it was, dude, we got to meet in person, technically, like, what, a year ago? Yeah. But I mean, hell, we've actually been talking for, 4 years now?
And what's even funnier, we were talking about, is that you were on the All Gen Gamers. We invited you on there. And I was on your podcast, the 8-Bit podcast. And it was funny. We were like, it's like we were two girls that went to a prom with other boys. And then we saw each other like, hi. And,
oh, hello there. And the eyelashes
they
fluttering
were fluttering
about.
Like, my panties were down, I tell you. But anyways, but we met at Portland, and it was really cool that we just knew each other right away. It's like, there's a lot of people there, and but we really connected on such a, let's call it a fanboy level, to do with our hobbies. They were so similar.
Yeah. Oh, dude, it was one of those things, like, what's weird is a lot of people that you end up, like, knowing for a while, but then you finally get to meet in person, it was one of those things, like, it seemed like you and me had fucking known each other for years and years and years, and this was just, like, relatively normal. I mean, we ran around the entire time playing games and just partying and having a good time, and even got to have a panel and stuff with Billy, Jay, and Eric.
And the funny thing is we ended up like teenagers hanging outside the high school, like, we were, but we shouldn't be saying this because, we're going back to Portland again, but, like standing beside the Portland Convention Center in a bushy area, just getting wasted. And can I tell you something? What I thought was so funny that night, there was a whole bunch of us before that, and we went into I think it was a 7-Eleven, and I was so drunk that I bought a 6-pack of beer bottles, and I walked out. I was so drunk, it was in a paper bag. I dropped it as soon as I walked out of 7-Eleven. That's how drunk I was. Smashed. Gone. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And then you walked right back in, and you bought me another 6-pack.
Dude, it was one of those things. You can't. It's like soldier down, and you have to go, and you got to trudge along. You got to drag the men through the trenches and stuff, because it's probably the most heartbreaking thing whenever you're on a high buzz and you see, like, your only hope for getting more drunk crash and burn in front of you, and it's like Darth Vader. No,
I was so drunk that when it smashed, I just stood there, like, it just went, duh. I was that stupid. I was that kind of like fucking out of it. But when you brought the beer back, all of a sudden I was like, right on, I'm awake again. I was ready to go, and then we ended up in a few hotel rooms with people, and oh man, it just got crazy. It just got crazy.
It was one of those, like, it literally was kind of like to me, it was a look into if Johnny and Alpha ever got to meet up whenever they were in high school, this is exactly the kind of shenanigans shits they would have been getting into.
But the funny thing, just earlier before we got all crazy and partying, we did this game chat episode, and we did it in the hotel, like my hotel room. and I set up the camera, and I had the worst lighting ever. Nobody told me about the fucking lighting in my face. This bright light from God shining in my face, and I'm like, fuck, or whatever. But the thing that happened there is we had this great fanboy conversation about fucking Star Wars, fucking everything in there. You know, video games, and that's when we were like, oh shit, like, we really are on a certain level. Like we both love anime. We both love, like, you know, Resident Evil, Metal Gear, and you know, fucking all that kind of shit. All the fanboy stuff. All, you know, like you know, kung fu movies. We're all in the same fucking zone, and it was crazy how much we fucking geeked out and talked. And we've talked. We got to tell everybody for months. Like when we get on a phone, we talk for 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of like, do you remember a long time ago whenever they'd have, like, those commercials and it would always show, like, the girl in, like, the 80s sweaters and stuff, and their hair's all big and up in the air with tons of hairspray, and they're on the phone for hours talking on it. That was essentially us, but we're full
I like how we keep referring to ourselves as these teenage women, you know? Like, you know, that's just so funny. At the prom and all that shit, but...
Yeah. With our panties all dampened and stuff, but it is true though. We actually had, like, excellent chemistry, and it's like one of those things of holy shit, we actually have, like, a stupid amount in common. And the thing is, a lot of stuff that we talk about is honestly, like, cool shit that a lot of other people would probably not only have interest in, but would probably, like, learn something from, or get to be like, oh man, I never heard about that game, or this album, or this anime, or this or that, you know. And it's just, it's excellent hearing material, and it's like, fuck it, why not make for good audio?
We kind of thought that, you know, we didn't think that it's not like people would tune in and say, oh, these are cool guys, you know, I want to listen to their podcast. We were more like, yeah, come listen to a podcast. You guys can relate to us. That's all it's really about. It's about just geeking out about fucking awesome shit that we love, like video games that we're really passionate about, and anime. I can't wait to have an entire episode just talking about fucking anime. I've never had a chance to do that before.
Yeah, that's the thing. And what's kind of cool, like, I don't know if a lot of people even know, but, like, Johnny's been into anime before anime was, like, really, really big.
You're making me sound really old, and it's true.
Dude, but I mean, to me, I actually find that fascinating, because whenever I got into anime, and probably, like, a lot of people right now could even relate to that, is, like, whenever Toonami was first starting on Cartoon Network and stuff, and I still remember going to places like Suncoast and getting VHS tapes, but you were, like, on the ground running with this shit even before that. And to me, like, anybody that gets to be there from, like, the very start of things and going forward, like, you get to see it, like, build up and grow in a whole different way. You know, you get to see it from a different perspective, and I just always thought that was, like, bad as hell. Like, that was just awesome to me.
Yeah, we'll do a lot of episodes on anime and stuff like that. And honestly, I think I got some interesting stories about the old days of anime and what it used to be like on with a 5th generation beta tape, and how you got copies and what the scene was like back then, and how it's evolved to now. You know, now it's just a pure downloading society with anime. The entire culture has changed, but that's a story for another time. For sure.
Oh yeah, but it's kind of cool, because that's one of many facets, you know, that, like, we've definitely connected on. Because I mean, like, the game chat episode, whenever we were just in there shooting the breeze about everything, it was weird because we didn't stay on, like, one subject. We bounced around all over the place. Like, if somebody had, like, a handful of bouncy balls and then just threw them off a roof, and you just see them go everywhere. That was kind of like, it was like ADD personified.
Yeah, we're very much like that. I think, you know, I think I can say that we're both very passionate people about our hobbies, and we're really into it. We're not kind of into it because it's cool. I can honestly say, I think for yourself, obviously as well, that we were into video games before, you know, honestly, they become so mainstream. Me and Rob, you know, it was in high school, we didn't talk to many people that we played video games. It was very, very hush hush. You didn't want people to know, oh, you play Mario? Oh, you're a fucking loser. And and you watch anime back then. You never told anybody. I couldn't have told anybody that I listened to Japanese music in high school. They would have thought I was fucking mental.
It's one of those things, though. It's just like it became, culturally acceptable, and it became mainstream because, it was aired on the right networks and it was brought to the masses in such a way. But it is one of those things like, a long time ago, whenever somebody was trying to go and make fun of somebody for being a geek, they bring up like, oh yeah, you're sitting around playing video games. Now it's like, it's hard to find people that don't play video games. Like, it's harder to find those people than it is now. Like, whether it's on your phone or on a handheld or on PC or on consoles, it's like, it's so different.
No, it's another thing. I think my generation grew up, and we grew up with the NES and superhero. I'm going to say superhero comics. I'm going to talk about like comic books. We grew up with that, and it was normal. My parents didn't, and so my generation grew up and started having kids and telling their kids it was cool, and all of a sudden our generation rules, and we're the one generation saying, yeah, superheroes are fucking awesome now. I remember back in the 80s, you would go to the comic book store and you'd buy your superhero comics, and there was other people in there, and the comic book shop owner smelled like BO, and you'd come home and with your secret pile of comic books, and you didn't take them to school or tell anybody. Where you fucking look at now, I walk down the street and every second person has got a Flash shirt on, a Green Lantern shirt, whatever, Captain America. It's just so fucking mainstream now, and it never used to be that way. If you used to be a comic book collector, you were behind closed doors, and you were looking for other people to hopefully talk to about this, because it was damn hard before the internet.
It was, and it's one of, like, think about like this, like on YouTube, the most subscribed person on YouTube is a gaming channel, and that's like, tens of millions of people that are watching, and that's just crazy to think about. And then how much bigger the market is now. Like, it used to be we had Nintendo and Sega, and that was really it. And now it's like you have Nintendo and Sega, and you have mobile and PC, and you have PlayStation. Like, Sega makes games for Nintendo. Like, that's a mind fuck in itself now. Like,
trust me, when Sonic was coming onto a Nintendo machine, it was like fucking, like fucking dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
We did get to go and relive one thing, though, and that's one of the things, like, a lot of people had said, oh, Sonic would kick the hell out of Mario. No, Mario would kick the hell out of him. And then we got to see them both in a Smash Brothers game where they literally got to fight.
See that. This kind of reminds me of, like, the King of Fighters, when you could finally see those characters fight against each other. That was always the dream match to do.
And you know what? What's cool about one thing I always loved about King of Fighters was the fact that King of Fighters kind of took over all the other franchises.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, all of them just melded into one, and it was like, no, we're doing King of Fighters now.
Yeah, that was their go-to thing, but I mean, it made sense because King of Fighters was like the opus, like it really was the pinnacle of like all their franchises. I liked Fatal Fury and stuff. I liked Art of Fighting. I liked Samurai Showdown, but King of Fighters was really where it was.
And that's see, we could go. Me and you could go into a tangent about that alone. But I'm just finishing off that one. When they did SNK versus Capcom, I tell you, I nearly passed out when I could do Terry Bogard versus Ken Masters. Holy fuck!
Yeah,
fucking, that was like the biggest deal, millennium match of the century. I think that came out in like 2000 or 2001 somewhere. Yeah, ridiculous.
And the thing is, like, I've actually gotten to go up to the stand-up arcade machine of it and play it. And it was one of those things, like, being able to see Capcom characters done up in the SNK art style, for example, was just mind-blowing to me, because the SNK had a very distinctive artist. And the one thing I always pointed out was their eyes. They always drew the eyes a certain way, and I love that art style. Like, it's so amazing. And but it's one of those things, like, as you go through the years and these sort of things happen, it's like, you can't help but the fanboy a little bit inside. You're just like, oh my god, it's happening.
Yeah, it's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, it's happening. Oh my god, unleash the Kraken.
Yeah, I know that those were the good days, and those were probably the last great days of SNK, unfortunately. And they've never. I know they've done further King of Fighters games, but it's just never quite been the same since the Neo Geo hardware disappeared. For me personally, you know.
It's one of those things, like, it kind of makes me sad because I still remember being excited and reading when I was a kid in magazines, because there was rumors that Neo Geo was going to make a 64-bit machine based off of the arcade hardware that they had.
Yeah,
out at
they had
time.
the arcade hardware, and they only made one game for it. Something a samurai game.
Yeah.
If I remember right.
Yeah, it was a Samurai. I forget what they called it, but it was always being dubbed as Samurai Showdown 64.
Something like that for sure. It's been a while, and then that never materialized. They just kind of said, "Okay, fuck this," and let's get it.
Yeah, it bummed me out though. It did. It was one of those things like if I don't know if you remember this, but there was also another 64-bit machine, the M2. And that never came out. It was made by the people that did the 3DO, but it was supposed to contend directly with, like, the Nintendo 64 and stuff. And they even had, like, they were taking, like, direct jabs at Nintendo. It was like Mario's cap, but it was melted.
What?
And they said, we're going to be everything that the Nintendo is, but even better because our hardware's more advanced. And it was impressive hardware, but a lot of the projects on there ended up going to the Dreamcast.
So this was the 3DO company?
Yeah, they ended up, like, the M2, like, if anybody's, if you're listening to this and you want to see stuff that never got to come out, but the M2 was, they actually have units out there and people have had them in their hands and stuff, but most of the games, they're kind of just beta. Just beta versions of games. But one of the games that I remember the most was D2 on Dreamcast. Originally was on the M2.
Yeah, D was a big game. D was a big game back then for showcasing things. You remember? Yeah.
Oh, it was. It was impressive as hell. But it's one of those things like, I had seen on it, like, the one website Unseen64, which is actually one of my favorite video game websites. They have, like, lots of unreleased games and beta and alpha builds and stuff, and you can see a lot of stuff on there because that's how I got to research it. It's really cool just to see, like, how things could have been, but the
3DO guys just couldn't quit. They just couldn't stop. It's bizarre, especially because I got the 3DO and that's another story into itself. I'll save that for another time. I wasn't the happiest that Christmas I got it. That's the whole thing. I got Samurai Showdown and I got Super Street Fighter for it. Those are the two games that I wanted, and they were great. But the only problem was I only had one controller port, so I had to go and buy another fucking controller and then plug that controller into that controller to be. Oh,
yeah, the daisy chaining of controllers. I was like, who the fuck thought this was a good design?
And then the one controller that came with it only had like 2 buttons, so I had to. Oh, so it didn't come with a 6 pad, like button pad. It was a disaster. It was absolutely a disaster.
Yeah, it was. A lot of things that they had done with it were asinine, but it was. Yeah, those years that you get something, you're like, this isn't what I wanted. No.
Yeah, that was a very strange Christmas. I was like, man, what's going to happen with the future of video games? I remember thinking that Christmas. I was like, this is a very weird time, and it was. But what was I going to say? Something else that we're going to talk about in future episodes, and I'm looking forward to this one, is Dungeons and Motherfucking Dragons. Mm-hmm. Finally.
Mm-hmm. Dude, that's one of the things, like, both of us have actually been role-playing for a long time, and the thing is, like, you more than likely get to role-play a lot more often than I do, because whenever I do, it's just every so often, but a lot of the stories that we could tell from, like, the characters we created to just the crazy-ass events that had occurred, and it's a really fun thing to do, and it's fun to just, like, have a bunch of people come down, everybody goes and gets some beer and stuff, and you just do whatever the hell that you want in some kind of little adventure. I love that shit.
And that's the thing I'm going to ask you in a future episode is I really want to hear your early days with D&D, how you discovered it, all that stuff. I think will make for a really fun podcast for sure.
I think a lot of people would, because that's not something that, like, if you go online, a lot of people don't discuss that or just don't know much about, role playing in Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. And they'll get to hear about it. It might even get people like, that actually sounds kind of cool. Because, I mean, even nowadays, despite how long it's been around, it's still viewed as like that's kind of weird. It's so true, isn't
it? It's so funny. I put out on my channel a few episodes on Dungeons and Dragons, and I try to make them fun and stuff like that. And I still get people are on a video game, like they're on YouTube, in a video game channel, saying, "Yeah, that sounds really dorky to me." It's like, what the fuck? This is still happening?
But you know what's cool, though? There's still a lot of people that not only had a shit ton of interest in the stories that you were telling, but wanted to hear more, and because, I mean, they were excellent. And it's one of those things like, I'd love to share that shit with people just because it'd be something, something extra that most people don't get to hear about. And essentially what you get to hear is me and Johnny get to go on about tons and tons of stuff, not just gaming, but like all the other extra crazy shit that we're into, which is, the entire point of being the Lords of Thunder.
And we should talk about the name. Is that we were trying to come up with a name for the podcast, and we tossed back so many ideas, and I sat one night. And what I do is I walk around and I look at certain games, and I try to think of games that you liked or that we had in common that we liked, and try to come up with names from there. I came up with a lot of stinkers, but you're trying to come up with names. I remember, what was it? Because you're a huge fan of Symphony of the Night. I'm a huge fan of Symphony of the Night, and I was like, what was I was thinking? The Symphony of the Night podcast, not the Symphony of the Night Nights of the Nights. I forget what the fuck it was. I was coming up with all these names, and I'm like, no, that's not right. This isn't right. And then I was just like, I remember, I'm like, Lords of Thunder. I'm like, I fucking love that game. I fucking love the PC Engine so much. And I got a copy of it in the other room. And I was looking at it, and I was like, I know that you really like it too. And then I talked to you. I'm like, what do you think about like the Lords of? And I thought it was just such a cool name. I'm like, what do you think of the Lords of Thunder podcast? And you're like, fuck yeah, like that sounds...
Dude, it's one of those things like Lords of Thunder to begin with is just a badass name. Like, I don't give a fuck what anybody says. Somebody will be like, that's corny. I'd be like, fuck you. It's cool as hell. I don't give a shit. Zeus disagrees completely. Yeah. Like, do you want that pantheon of gods coming down and, like, giving you what for? Fuck no. Like, Lords of Thunder is just... And it's a badass game, too. So that also helps. So it's got some legit music, right? Behind it. Yeah, that's my main... Like, I never got to play the PC Engine version. I always got to play the Sega CD version, which I know a lot of people say is the inferior of the two, but to me, I didn't give a shit. I was happy I was playing, like, one of the best side-scrolling shooters I'd ever laid my hands on.
I've never played the Sega CD version. I've only ever played the Turbo version.
Yeah, everybody says, like, there's like, differences between the two, and I've never gone to play both, back-to-back to be like, oh, I see. I know that there's supposed to be a slight difference between the music, really? For example, and I know that the color palette is another thing that's supposed to be different, but it's just one of those things. But, when it comes to naming stuff, that's actually probably one of the hardest things to do, is to come up with a name that you're like, yes, that totally works, because so many things, while they seem like they're cool, it doesn't, it doesn't mesh well.
Yeah.
And like, we did, like, for days and days, we just kept on, like, tossing out things. And, there was quite a few things, like, we'd say, and we were like, saying it out loud just didn't feel right. But Lords of Thunder definitely.
Oh, man, I wish I had all the names that we had. We had like, probably 15 to 20 names, and they range from corny to cornier to whatever, and then this one was a strong name. It's like, yes, I feel good about this. This is perfect type of thing. So
no, I think that it works really well. It's one of those things, like, it's something both of us actually relate to directly, and also it's one of those things, like, seriously, I have to tell all of you, like, find a copy of the game and play it, like, especially if you're into shooters, like, you should. It's that good, and I already know. I know that the game's expensive. You can always emulate it. I will never tell somebody don't emulate something when the game's expensive as shit. Like,
we're in agreement in that fact. I will tell anybody, go fucking get the ROM and experience the game. We both are in agreement on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the only time that I've ever been against emulation is when it comes to, like, new things. Like, For example, like with the 3DS, I know that there's emulators for that, and I'm like, just go buy the game brand new. They're selling it right now. Like, if you're a fan of it, support the
Yeah,
product.
exactly.
You know, that's like the main thing that you should always do. But something like Lords of Thunder is like over
It's ridiculous.
$100, and I can understand somebody doesn't have $100 just to toss out there. And like, I'm gonna go get this game now. Like, from my own personal experience, I'd played through and beat Snatcher several times through emulation before I ever owned a physical copy.
Yeah, the curiosity
And
for
it's
you must have been like, I want to play this fucking game and I want to play it now. And it's an old fucking game, and
Yeah.
it's like, what? It's worth $350 now. Give me a break. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's one of those, but I'll at least give that credit over something like Earthbound. Earthbound is not rare and should not cost what it's going for.
But it is rare,
Whereas,
though.
like,
It's it's not like readily available. Like my friend owns a video game store, and it rarely comes through there. It rarely does.
I think people are hoarding copies. I swear, because I could come across copies of Earthbound in stores around my area at least like a couple times a year. Whereas Snatcher, I don't.
Snatchers, you don't
ever.
see. Yeah.
Like, it's really a truth. Like, I still to this day have not seen one for sale around my area. But and the only reason I got it was from, a person I knew. And it was just one of those things. I was like, this is one of my all-time favorite games. Yes. And it's if I ever got rid of my game collection ever for any reason, and I had to save something, Lunar 2 and Snatcher would definitely be on that list of things that I would save and just keep, because they mean something
I totally
to me.
get that. We were talking about that the other day as well. If our collections burned down, what would we keep? And we both said a couple of sentimental games. If we could keep something, that'd be fine. Everything else can go. It's no big deal. It would suck, yeah, obviously, but it's not the end of the world. As long as if I could keep my Phantasy Star, the first one, and maybe about one or two other games, I'd be okay.
Yeah, there are certain games like, and that's one of the things like, that we both can relate on is like throughout the years, we've come across games that we've had like a personal connection. And, there's a number of reasons why you could have a personal connection with something, but, that actual particular item means something to you. And the fact that you still have it, like I have games from like the mid-90s that when I first started collecting and stuff that are still here. And I can pick them up and think, oh, I remember getting it, around this time, and I remember the store that I got from, and I still remember when I first popped it in a system, and that's cool as hell. But if you sold it, you don't have that direct connection. All you can do is think, I remember when I used to have that game.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. It's funny how I can remember entire times in my life through video game releases. It's almost sick. Like somebody would say, "You need to get a life, man." But it's like those events were important to me, and they were important to me through my life. Certain video games releases, I remember the times a little bit more. Like it's so weird. Like when Final Fantasy Tactics came out, I always remember meeting Rob at Burger King, and he was able to get the game for me early that morning because I was busy. I forget what I was doing. I'm meeting him there, and him giving me the copy of the game and the receipt, and me paying him at that point. It was like things like that you don't forget. That's a memory. But what if I didn't get that game that day? What would I have remembered? I don't know. Nothing.
Yeah, but it's kind of cool whenever you have that kind of stuff, though, because then you can kind of look back, and also Final Fantasy Tactics is excellent. I love that game.
Yeah,
so
that's
like,
why I remember that moment. That moment was a
dude. I actually I have a lot of fond memories of that too. Like the very first time I ever got to find Cloud in the game, and I was just like, holy shit, Cloud Strife is in this game. Like I felt like, I had unearthed, some kind of secret that Indiana Jones should have found, but it was me who found it. And meanwhile, it's not all that big of a deal.
Back
but,
then, before the internet,
it
was a big deal.
Oh, it is. It's one of those things, like, I still remember, like, the subscriptions to magazines that I had, the stores that I'd go to and stuff. It's still am kicking myself that I don't have like my old Electronic Gaming Monthlies and my Game Pros and my Game Fans.
You got rid of them at one
time? What had happened was I had kept all of them for a long time, and then being the idiot teenager that I was, I had went and I had taken, like, I had cut up all the actual, like, pictures and stuff and taken ads out, and I decorated my entire room with them. I'm talking, like, from
I did
floor to
stuff like
ceiling.
that too. I got
That's
photographs in my place of, I had the Lunar advertisement, and it's just on my wall, the working design stuff, right out of my EGMs. I just razor bladed it out, stuck about 5 or 6 of them, the same ad on my wall. It was so bizarre, eh? That's what you did back then.
I can actually still remember the Lunar 2. The Lunar 2 ad, because it was a 2-page ad. And when it spread across both of them, it had the art from Lunar 2, and then it showed all the contents from the actual, like, collector's edition and stuff. And I always thought it looked really nice, because I liked the art from Lunar a whole bunch. And it was just, like, real cool looking. And I still remember that was one of the first ads that I had actually put up from Lunar 2, and I put it up in the corner because that's where I want to start, because I had that, Final Fantasy Anthology, and Chrono Cross. Those were some of the first ones I put up because I was so excited about those, and they were like some of my favorite games at the time.
Yeah, Chrono Cross has taken too many batches over the years, and it really pisses me off. It reminds me of like that kid in high school that is bullied too much and totally doesn't deserve it. I love Chrono Cross. I think the music is way up there. I put it in my top 10 musics for video games of all time. Absolutely. Yeah, it's great.
It's one of those things, like, I think it's all because it had to follow up Chrono Trigger. So everybody just looked at it as, oh, you're just a disappointment because you're not as good as Chrono Trigger, and, you know, you didn't do as much as it did, or, you know, whatever. And personal preference aside, I do prefer Chrono Trigger over Chrono Cross, but that doesn't make Chrono Cross a bad game.
I look at them as two very different things. They feel very different from each other. So I look at them different. I know Chrono Cross is the sequel, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like some side sequel or something, you know?
Yeah, to me, I'm just like, you know, it's something within the same universe. That's like how I end up viewing it, because that's like with all the Final Fantasy games, like they're not directly associated with one another, with the exception of like the few, like Final Fantasy 4 and Final Fantasy 7 to have direct sequels and prequels and stuff. But you know, I'm not gonna sit there the entire time and be like, well, 7's better than 8, and you know, and 6 was better than, and do all that. I just try to judge them on their own merits, and I think that's important to do with stuff like that. Right, so
that's what you do with Final Fantasy 13, correct?
Well, 13, 13 can just fuck itself into a black hole.
We might take a little bit of heat for it, but we're not big. We can just say we're not big fans of 13. All right, like.
Yeah, and this isn't one of those things where, like, we're saying, you know, oh man, you know, people that like it suck or something. It's just for us personally, we did not really dig it.
I've got many friends online and around that did enjoy it, and I would write to them and say, please sell me on it. Like, tell me what I'm doing wrong. I thought there was something wrong with me. You know what I mean? And so they enjoyed it. So a lot of people did enjoy it. So yeah, we would never bash the people who liked it. We're kind of, if anything, I'm kind of jealous of the people who did enjoy it, because I wanted to enjoy it.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, you want to, but there's a lot of games. Like, I was actually thinking about that last night. Was thinking about games that I had gotten and was excited about, and then turned out to be extremely disappointed. And that's one. Actually, at some point, we should definitely have like a. We could probably do quite a few episodes, but we should probably definitely have future episodes just RPG dedicated. Because man, that's one of the things. Like, me and Johnny have played a ton of them and like the genre a lot.
Totally. And we really like the PlayStation 1 era. We're big fans of that. But then again, you know, I'm not just like somebody who's trapped in the past. I love the PS2 era. I love all the areas of RPG. You know?
It's one of those things, like, everybody can have like their favorite. Like, for me personally, the PS1 era was when we kind of hit that boom. And it was just running on all cylinders and stuff. Like, Super Nintendo and PS1 for me had probably the most genre-defining RPGs and stuff. But I mean, you know, I can still go to PlayStation 2 and still pick up like, you know, Shadow Hearts and stuff and play that and love it. And I can still, you know, I can go over to the Sega Genesis and I can still pick up Phantasy Star 4, which is one of the best RPGs I've ever played.
Cool.
Yeah, and I'm and by the way, Sega, where the fuck is the official Phantasy Star 5?
Don't even wake the giant within me. You know, like that's a whole
like
other episode. You know.
Yeah, but you know, that definitely an RPG episode. But like, one of the things just saying before, there's been so many times where I've gotten a game and I was excited about it, and I played it, and I was like, "What the fuck just happened?" Like I thought this was going to be good. Like Mortal Kombat 4, for example. I played that, and because I was a big fan of Mortal Kombat, and when I got 4, I was like, "This is a steaming
for
pile."
me personally, it was about 1 and 2, and after that, I just never got back into it. 1 and 2 were so defining for me, and then I don't want to say that all the rest were just the same, but I felt like the first one was so like, whoa, you know, the digitized characters, that was unique to see at the time, and then the second one was really about fatalities, and I'd never seen that before. So those concepts were so new that no matter what they would do with fatalities or new characters or better graphics, those concepts would never change. There was never anything that unbelievably fresh again, because they couldn't. They said it. They did it right the first 2 times, or if you want to call it twice. That they set Mortal Kombat up. I couldn't get anything more out of Mortal Kombat. I was sad. I was like, okay, that's Mortal Kombat. But then again, it's the same for Street Fighter. But I like Street Fighter more. I'm more of a Street Fighter guy.
You know what's weird? Like I felt a lot of people always said that for them Street Fighter 2 was like one of their all-time favorites and the best of them. And for me, like I liked Street Fighter 2, but I didn't think it was nearly as big of a deal as Street Fighter Alpha 3.
You know, and for me and Rob, it was Street Fighter Alpha 2 and 3 exactly. 2 was like wow, right? 2 was like you can fight against somebody. That was that concept. And then, and Alpha 2 and 3 really it added more features, alpha counters and all that stuff. It became much more complex, and I enjoyed the complex.
Oh, it did. It was weird to think. I mean, Street Fighter 2, I will always tip my hat to because it defined fighting games. Like, it did, and it's a timeless game. No matter how you look at it, somebody could say, I hate it, but they have to recognize what it did. Yeah. And, but, as the series progressed, I don't know, I always found the Alpha series to be a lot better, except for the EX plus Alpha
No, I don't like any
games.
EX stuff at all.
Like, those I thought were weird. Like, I could play them, but I was just like, this definitely is not up to snuff compared to the other ones. And it's not because it was, the whole 3D thing. It didn't feel as good, and it just didn't seem like it was pushing the envelope the way that the Alpha games were. But the Street Fighter, I love them, but I will always go and say, like, Guilty Gear is the one that won my heart and still has it.
The funny thing is I've never had a chance to mention it. I'm not going to get into details, but I'm not that much of a fan of Guilty Gear, and Hanzo loves Guilty Gear. Like, he just... Actually, I think his name on... is like known as Guilty Hanzo online in a lot of places, because he loves Guilty Gear so much. But I don't know. It was just so all over the place, crazy. I was just like... I just was like, you know what? I'm just sticking with Street Fighter. I kind of was like that.
Oh no, Guilty Gear is it is insane. Like I'll say that much. I don't know. I always had a thing for like very very fast gameplay, like to the point where a lot of people would call it like Twitch gameplay. And like for example, with first person shooters, one of the ones that I'd gotten into a whole bunch was the Unreal games. Unreal Championship and stuff, and those are just fast as shit games. Like when you jump like 30 feet into the air and stuff, and when you shoot, you don't shoot a rocket, you shoot like 5, and it's just it's meant to be over the top, and I like that. And Guilty Gear kind of gave me that in fighting games because I mean prior to that I had the Marvel vs. Capcom games. Those were like going and pushing
those
like the speed
schizophrenic
and
games
stuff.
at times for sure.
Oh, they're absolutely nuts. Like when, like I like Street Fighter 2 Turbo, but to me, the speed had shit on the Marvel vs. Capcom games.
Yeah,
just nuts.
Yeah. No, hey, don't get me wrong. The one thing I appreciate about Guilty Gear, the character designs are very interesting. The animation is fantastic. It's a wonderful looking type of game. It was just a series that I never really delved into. Me and Rob played it a little bit here and there, but we always kind of did Street Fighter. We always kind of said, we just do Street Fighter.
Dude, if there's ever one thing, I always tell everybody, it's the music from Guilty Gear. Like, to me, I'd done a video like eons ago just talking about like some of the most metal video games out there, and Guilty Gear is definitely one of them. Like, the dude that does the music for it, Daisuke Ishiwatara, I always butcher his name, but I'm trying. But his music, like, he does the music for that and the Blaze Blue games, and holy hell, it's just... It's amazing. Like, it really is. Like, his guitar work is hard to match. It's just so damn good.
I've used the music in the background of some of my episodes because it's so good. I always appreciated the music for sure.
Dude, you know what? Here, and something. One of your videos, you did that. The favorite Stage 1 theme songs and stuff, and one of them, Guilty Gear Judgment on PSP. It's an actual beat 'em up on Guilty Gear, but the Stage 1 theme song on that, like, I could listen to that on loop for hours.
Nice, yeah. Well, we're gonna talk about all that old stuff, like rival schools united by fate, shit like that.
Dude, that's one of those ones like that was a one-hit wonder, but overseas that actually did a lot better.
We should it's so funny. Yeah, I'll get into that another time as well. As I found my copy of the game. I'd lost it for a long time. I was like, holy fuck. Like, I forgot about this game. It was so weird that I had this moment. I was like, I forgot about you. How did I forget about you? Like, you were a big game when you came out to me. And it was weird. All of a sudden, I started listening to music, getting nostalgic, going back in time. And there's a whole time period I'd forgotten about playing Rival Schools. It was bizarre, but...
And what's cool though is like going and playing those again. You end up having memories start cropping up again.
It was really weird.
You're just like, oh wow, I remember that and this. Holy crap! Now and it's just one of those things. That
we're not gonna be like a bashing episode where we're bashing everything, but it reminded me of the heydays of Capcom, and I was just like, oh man, like this is when Capcom was so fucking fresh. I mean, they could do no wrong. You know, it was like Square back then could do no wrong.
Yeah, those two companies for a certain time, from 16 to 32-bit era, they were batting home runs all day long. Like even in their sleep, they were just home run with every release,
awesome.
And it was just it was a very good
really
time.
Good time, and I don't think a lot of people realize is that. I know Rob's really pissed at Capcom. You have been upset at Capcom, and I totally get it. We all are entitled to dislike, have a bit of an issue with them. But man, it's hard to like fault them for the past, and I think that's why we're mad. That's what I was going to say. Is because we love them so much. We used to love them so much.
Well, that's why I always try to say, like, a lot of people, they'll swear off to companies, but I always say, if you love a company a whole bunch, you tell them, with your wallet and vocally, this is what I'm not liking about it. And when they do something good, you should say, please keep going in this direction and support the good ideas, because that's the only way that they maintain a good track record and they become the great company they once were.
That remake of One, again, on Next Generation Systems, that was one where I was like, yes, that's the Capcom that I want to see. I want to see more things like this. Capcom.
Dude, the new Strider. The new Strider was amazing. And the thing is that you were actually one of the very first people that I got to hear like talk about it and tell me anything about it. And I was just like, damn. And I ended up getting it on, it was a free download on PS4. And that game rocks. I was just like, holy hell. Like it brought me full circle to when I played Strider 2 on PS1. I was like, this... And it made me think of, like, the Metroidvania-style Castlevania games and stuff. And I was just like, this is so
It had the
Metroidvania
feeling. I wish it had a little bit more of that. But it was great. I was so happy. They got it right. But I think I remember you ranting about the end of the game. Because holy shit, me and Hans were playing the end of the game. We were fucking losing our fucking minds. We were losing our fucking minds. It was crazy. Like,
The weird thing about it is the game, like, while it's challenging, it's like the final moments of the game where it goes from being like challenging to it's just like absolutely throat fucking you.
Ass raping.
It's like no kids gloves. It's like condom. You mean cheese grater?
Oh,
That's what I'm wearing.
It was like I just remember I gave the controller to hands. And I'm like, okay, buddy, it's up to you. I'm fucking losing it. I'm losing. Yeah.
That's one of the things that always sucks is whenever you're playing a game and you're in the zone and you keep on losing and you start getting pissed off, then you start doing worse and worse and worse, and all you want to do is defeat it, and you're just like, damn it.
You know, it's funny
winning.
what a lot of people don't know about me, and I think only Kim and Rob really know because they're in the room with me when I'm playing video games at the time, is I have a show called the Happy Console Gamer Show. But dude, when I play video games, I fucking lose my shit at times. I mean, there was this once, I've smashed so many fucking controllers. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck it is. I lose it. I completely lose it.
Well, I think it's because like I've been there, and like I've gone through plenty of controllers because you get so into it and you don't want the game to win. Because that's what it's doing. Like, the game's technically defeating you, and you're just like, no, I have to get to this next part. And it's even worse whenever it's something where it's not actually a challenging game per se, but it's literally just cheap game design. So while you're enjoying it, you're just like, I'm being fucked over. I can't believe this.
Like, Kim will be like, you know what Kim does to me? She's like, put the controller down. Put the controller down. Put the controller down. Well, I'm ranting and ranting. Because I've got it and I'm about to smash it. I'm losing my fucking mind. And I'm like out of my head. And then it's like I hear this voice calling me back to earth. Like, no, put the controller. Oh, I'm like, yes, I will put the controller down now. It's like I come back into my body. And I'm like, then I feel
Kim,
stupid.
a.k.a. the voice of reason.
Then I feel stupid. I'm like, later on, I'm like, oh my God, was I really that mad over that? I'm like, Jesus.
And sometimes it's like, I've seen plenty of people like get that way, myself included, and it's best just like take a breather, like go get a drink, grab a bite to eat, go online, just do something, just take a little break from it. When you come back to it all calm and collected, usually then that's when you sit down, you're like, I can't believe I was mad, and then you trounce the game.
Either that, or you walk back in, you're so calm, you're like, yes, I'm glad I had that moment. You get back and grab the controller, just smash it.
Analog sticks and buttons just flying everywhere. I'm like, see, now I feel better.
And I only murdered my entire family. Boy.
I swear, I wonder how many of the, like, I wonder how many times Nintendo controllers were bought just because of the Ninja Gaiden games, for example.
Oh my God, of all fucking games too, right? You know?
Nowadays, like, the equivalent would be, like, the Demons and Dark Souls games. Like, how many people just chuck their 360 and PS3 controllers, and there's holes in walls and, like, exploding controllers everywhere, and they're like, all right, to Amazon or out to the store and going and buying new stuff.
You know, it's funny. I was playing Dark Souls, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, and I finished the first level, and it wasn't so bad. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get down with this game. This is fucking awesome. And then I finished the first level, then I'm in, like, I guess a central hub to the game. And then there's this guy who's they're an NPC, and he's giving me advice like, oh, very good, you need to do this and do this. And I'm like, fuck you, man. And I get my sword and start hacking the cunt, right? I start hacking him up, and then he starts chasing me. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And he starts fucking hacking me up, and I'm dead. I'm like, oh, shit. I'm like, okay, I shouldn't have done that. When I respawn, I won't do that again to him. So all of a sudden, I respawn, and I'm back. And all of a sudden, the guy's not giving me any advice anymore. He's just coming after me right off the bat. And I'm like, and I'm running like a fucking banshee. I don't make it fucking 2 seconds away. He slashes me. I die again. I'm like, okay. Like, maybe I need to get, out of the zone so it will reset. So I'm start again. All of a sudden, he starts off chasing me, and I'm running away. We must have gone about 7 or 8 times. I'm like, okay. And also, my blood is boiling. I'm like, why the fuck did I have this NPC he's so relentlessly after me? Like, why won't it reset? And I left the area, came back, and he fucking killed me. I'm like, man, are they ever brutal in this game? And Kim was like, John, put the control down. This is like in the 10th or 11th time. Put the control down. I'm like, fuck. So I had to restart the game or something because I'm that fucking retarded. Like, don't kill an NPC in Dark Souls. I've learned my lesson. Thank you, game gods. I get it.
Dude, what's cool about it though is it's one of those things that it's kind of cool that they programmed the game to be like, I won't forget. I know what you did. Do you think I'm just going to be nice to you? You get no info, and if anything, you get a sword up the ass. That's all you get.
Dude, it really lived up to the name of the game. I was like, yeah, this game is relentless, and it should be. And it makes you learn. At that point, I was like, I'm an idiot. Don't kill an NPC in this game. Like, you just don't fuck with shit. Just keep safe. Keep alive in this game.
See, I wish more RPGs had thought about stuff like that. Like, can you imagine how many times the AI characters in RPG towns should have turned around and just cracked your head wide open for stealing all the shit in their house?
How many times have you gone into somebody's house? Come on. How many times and gone through their closets and, done the panty drawer and, like ran out? Like, I mean, how many times has a person done that in their life of playing RPGs? Fuck. Thousands.
Dude, I think it's even funnier with because they'll have things like you go to like a merchant's shop and stuff, and they'll have you can walk behind the counter and there's a couple treasure chests back there. So you open them up and you get a couple of things that he actually sells in the store for free, and it's obviously like it should technically that's his inventory. And he doesn't say shit. He's just like, no, it's cool. I'm just going to stand here while you're behind the counter, taking my gold, my shields, and my swords and stuff, and not fucking paying me. I don't call guards or anything. Yeah, take it and leave.
Yeah.
And it's so damn funny to think about, like, if they apply real world, thought process to something like this.
Oh man, that's the funny that's the cool thing in those old games. They're charming and all, but for me in an RPG, I'm like, oh, I'm going in somebody else's house and looking in their cupboards again. It's like being here done. It's kind of a bit of a comfort zone now. When you play an RPG and you're able to do that, you're like, yeah, I've only done this 10,000 times. I'm with this.
Dude, you know what's weird though? Those kind of games, like for me, like the older school RPGs, I just find relaxing. Like I know it's all menu based and it's not nearly as exciting as something like Star Ocean or the Tales games, but like for me, it's just I kind of like being able to play something half awake, and all I have to do is just think, like, well, he is a fire monster. I guess I'll use this ice
water,
spell.
For sure. And, like a game that comes to mind is like Lunar. That's a really relaxing game. It's a really good game.
And they're excellent games. I'll tell anybody that, like, I know a lot of people will say the Sega CD versions are better. I personally prefer the PS1 ones.
Yeah, they are better. I played both. I own both. Yeah.
They're some of the best. Like, if somebody ever wants to see, give me a game that's like the foundation of what an RPG should have. What it's like, how it looks aesthetically, what the gameplay mechanics should be like, the whole 9 yards. I say things like, the earlier Final Fantasies, the Lunar games, and the earlier Dragon Quest games.
Those are pretty much the foundations of RPGs.
Those I'd love to death. And again, that'll be something we even get to talk about in future episodes. But that's
I was just about to say is that also. We don't really have a formula, so we're going to talk about everything. It won't be just a video game podcast. It's going to be an everything podcast. Everything under the sun. Go for it.
I think that actually helps though, because you won't know what to expect on every single episode, and I kind of like it because a lot of people that are gamers that watch our channels and stuff and listen to anything that we're saying, they do obviously like other things other than video games, or they might have had an interest in it, and we might be able to be like, oh, hey, you need to check out the anime Death Note. It's really cool because it's so different. They're like, wow, I never thought about that. I like anime, and I never watched that.
Hey, fuck you and your Death Note, bastard, fuck.
They could be like, fuck Death Note. I wish it was real so I could write your name in it. And it's like, well, that's awfully taking it far. But it's one of those things like I kind of like the fact that, like we talked about earlier, that we're into a lot of shit, like a whole lot. And just like on that game chat episode, we were all over the place. And that's kind of like the entire premise to the podcast. We can talk about things like, we can talk about music, we can talk about wrestling, we can talk about anime, we can talk about role playing, we can talk about video games. And there is no limits other than just the goofy shit we feel like talking about and sharing with everybody. And
I'm telling you, there's some stuff I think I'm gonna talk about on the podcast that I've never talked about on the show or on my older podcast. Stories that like I've always wanted to tell, but my show's not the right forum for it. And I think this is the right time to do a lot of stuff. That I think it's going to be some really interesting stories for people. I'm looking forward to a lot of your stories about your early days of everything. And we're going to delve into a lot because we're going to do this, but we got to tell everybody this is a weekly podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely, we've been wanting to do this because, like I said, it's like when me and Johnny talk on the phone, well, we had even laughed like, dude, we could have just made this into like a video or a podcast, and it would have been awesome. Like, why aren't we doing that? And that's the main thing. It's like, obviously, those two fucking knuckleheads over there have chemistry and not only know a lot of shit about like the individual things that they're into, but it'd be cool stuff for other people to hear about. Because if there's ever one thing that I feel accomplished about, it's if I tell somebody, hey, I want you to go check out this game, I don't know, Kudelka on PS1. It's one of the best gothic horror RPGs ever, which is already a very rare subgenre in itself, but check it out. And when somebody says, I got to play it and it was amazing, you're right. The idea that I got to get somebody into those things, it makes it cool because it's like, yeah, people should think this is kick-ass because we have a love for
it was just
stuff.
like me in high school going around to people, this is before the internet, saying, dude, you got to see this thing called fucking anime. It's unbelievable. And they're like, watch this Japanimation? Remember that was a term they used to use, Japanimation.
Dude, I remember that, and I always face-palmed at it, and I'm like, oh God! Just shut up.
I never liked Japanimation. Some of my friends use that term, and it was always anime.
Yeah, to me, the term Japanimation is what a bunch of old guys in an office came up with to try to explain it to people in its title alone. Because they're like, anime. What do you mean? But like, well, it's just
like
animation.
Saying American animation. I love American.
Yeah, that's all that it is. It's just. Like, some people are like, you mean, like, Japanese cartoons? I'm like, well, sort of, but, it goes much deeper into that, and again, that'll be another thing that we'll get to sit there and, like, talk about, like, all throughout the years of all the different animes and OVAs and movies and manga and stuff. And there's, holy shit, there's gonna be a lot.
I got some stories about people in town and stuff like that. Like, one guy I know, I haven't talked to him in a while, but super into hentai. That is a fucking hilarious story into itself. I mean, fucking crazy into hentai. That's the story.
Dude, I've had a lot of friends into that, and I'm just like, I'm waiting for that day that I go to my house and I have a printed up picture with a hole drilled into it, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna leave.
Yeah, I'll
like you do your thing. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna go grab a bite to eat.
I'll talk about in the future, like the first time I ever saw hentai. And like how fucking crazy that was. Like, what the fuck is this? My first hentai I ever saw was Yurotsuki Doji. And I was like, what the fuck is this? I picked it up by accident.
Dude, I don't even know what my first, I think it was actually The Blue Girl.
Yeah, I've seen The Blue Girl a long time ago. So. Yeah,
that shit, it's all over the place, but it's another one of those random things. Like, this is basically the kind of shit that you can expect to like be listening to on here, which is to me pretty fucking awesome.
And we're not gonna. This will be probably an explicit podcast. If you haven't figured that out by now, no holding back on the swearing or content. It will be just ridiculous. Just so you know.
Yeah, it's not one of those things like we're trying to like be vulgar and disgusting. It's just we're just being ourselves without any filters and limits.
I'm not on good behavior with my show, but with my YouTube show I try to tell certain stories a certain way, but this way I get to just kind of be myself. I was really like that in my old podcast. I was just able just to be myself. And I think a lot of people were shocked back then, like, I can't believe how fucking, insanely crazy you are. Like, I think I shocked a few people. It's like, no, me and Rob are really nutty outside of the show. We always have been, we're...
Yeah, but that's one of the things, like, it lets you appreciate it a lot more, because anybody who's listening is like, oh man, I get to know them a lot better.
I think for sure, people will get to know us a lot more, in some cool ways, and maybe in some not cool ones. I don't know, but you'll get to definitely know more about us and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just going to be a very organic podcast every week. It's not like going to be like, oh, we have to cover current news, or we have to do this, or it's just kind of like whatever we feel like talking about, we're going to do. And I think that'll be healthy for the long run of the podcast.
It's just a lot of cool stuff. The thing is, like, we both like a lot of stuff, and we know a lot of other people out there like that, or at least would be open to being interested in that kind of stuff. And that's what it's about. It's just two people that are fans about a bunch of stuff that are also friends and just want to go and
that's
shoot
pretty
shit.
much it in a nutshell.
And that's it. And try to do so in, like, an informative and an entertaining way. It's, that's pretty much what we're hoping to. I'm pretty sure that we've at least, like, kind of showcase that to some degree, at least with this as an opening episode.
We've covered a lot of fun stuff. We went all over the place, and the thing is we've agreed, and just so you guys know that ahead of time, we're going to say in the very first episode, we really want every episode to be about 1 hour long. And you want to take it, you tell everybody why we both agree on this fully.
I think that it makes a lot of sense, because I notice a lot of people, if you have something, and this is from my own personal experience, but I've seen a lot of people, if you have like a podcast that's like 20 minutes or something, they say, well, I wish it was longer. If you have a podcast that goes up to 2 hours, then they say, I wish it was a little bit shorter. And I noticed a lot, even my own preference, that an hour felt like a very good amount of time. Like if you were listening to it on the road, just like, a commute to and from work, or from school and stuff, or if you have it on the background while you're getting stuff done, like you're playing games, it just seems like a perfect amount of time, because it's not overstaying its welcome, and it's also not so short that you didn't really get like the meat of it.
Exactly. It's the perfect amount of time, and me. The funny thing is, it's going to be hard for me and you, because we can go on and on and on.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like, we're both very chatty guys, which is a good thing, because I mean, if you have a podcast with two people that are kind of socially inept and not good at speaking, then you're just you're pretty much fucked. Like, you might as well just run right off a cliff, like, and hit everything on the way down. So luckily, it's not that. And we both have, like, experience in front of a camera, talking in crowds, and doing podcasting. So hooray for that!
It just kind of comes together well, and just reinforcing again, as I said, we just have so much in common, and I think it's going to make for some really fun future episodes, and hopefully you guys like it. That's what it's all about. Like, we're putting it out there for you guys, and hopefully some of you can connect with it and find some entertainment in it. That's the only reason why we're doing it.
Yeah, and if you did end up liking the episode, please definitely keep coming back, because we'll keep on posting shit. Even if, like, one person's listening, fuck it, then one person will be listening. But I mean, tell somebody, like, these guys know their shit, or they're kind of funny, or, well, I like that one, the other one can go fuck himself. That Alpha Mega Sin fellow,
fucking...
every single mammal.
Yeah, the Happy Concert Gamer, what a fucking loser. And it's fine, for sure. It's especially because we have two different audiences listening to us. You have your audience listening, and I have my audience listening, and vice versa. A lot of our audiences might not know each other, or know you and know me, type of thing.
This is a good way to introduce to both of them at the same exact time, and then as it progresses, and also with it, us just talking about whatever we want. It's easy for somebody, say we're on episode 7. Somebody can go and just find out about it, go back to the first one, listen all the way through, and it's just, you can jump in anywhere and be just fine.
Pretty much. And
but obviously this one's a lot easier for anybody that might not be, like, I don't know who the hell that guy is or that guy is, so an episode like this is kind of good.
For sure. So, should we call that a day in our first official podcast?
Yeah, I think that's been about an hour, so Well, if anything, I'm glad that this all went quite well, and I'm hoping everybody out there actually got some enjoyment out of it. Granted, it's only an introductory episode, but what the fuck can we do? But just stay tuned for more, obviously, because there will be. So, well, this has been Alpha Omega Sin, and the Happy Console Gamer. I don't know how do you want to go and end this?
I don't know. I don't know. And that's the perfect way to go at, to leave on it, is that thanks, guys, for listening, and listen to future episodes, because we will definitely be back. So, anyways, guys, till next time. Yeah.
Yeah, fuck yeah. We'll see you next time.